And we are live. Hello, everybody. I don't expect anybody to be on just yet. I didn't do exactly the best job of trying to promote this one because I switched things up at the last minute. Surprise, surprise, ADHD brain. I would do that. It's totally something that tracks with my ADHD brain. But tonight I wanted to talk about it's very serious. There's actually the reason why I changed up the stream tonight from talking about sex and schizophrenia. I just bumped that to next week. We're going to talk about how schizophrenia impacts, sex and relationships. Of course, it'll be unfiltered, raw, frank conversations about what my relationships have been like and up until now, and then of course where I am now. But tonight I wanted to spend just a few minutes on live addressing something that's happening right now here in Washington State where I live. There is a man who is a military veteran who is diagnosed with PTSD and struggled with mental health issues. And he's actually at large right now, accused of killing his 3 daughters. And they're from, I think, Wenatchee. This is, again, a military veteran who is accused of killing his 3 children. So now it hasn't been said. Now, of course, tonight's live stream, that you saw on there, it says, the naked truth about why some schizos do kill. Well, this hasn't been confirmed that he even had schizophrenia. But if he's still actively psychotic after a period of time, psychosis, the difference between PTSD and schizophrenia is the line between somebody with PTSD and somebody with full-blown schizophrenia is razor thin, and it hinges on the idea that there is some kind of it's a constant. There's some kind of positive symptom, and when we say positive, we don't mean like a good thing. We just mean the person is experiencing an additional voice or paranoia or a symptom that is not normal to their normal everyday experience of like the world around them. So that we're talking about a man who is accused of taking the lives of his 3 children. Now, we don't have any confirmation that this man had schizophrenia, so it's dangerous to go out and say, oh, this schizo guy went out and, killed his 3 kids. It's dangerous to say that, but what we do know is that there is a military veteran out there who is at large right now, wanted by the local authorities for killing his 3 daughters. And so it stands to reason that if a man comes to the VA, or anyone comes to the VA, man or woman, comes to the VA and seeks help, you should be able to receive that assistance. But in my experience as a veteran, I haven't been able to access my health benefits. And in fact, it even took forever to even just get access to my separation paperwork, which I found out when I even did go to apply to get a copy of my DD-214, because I turned it in on accident to a prospective employer. I gave them my member 4 copy. Which is like the original copy. It's the most important page of your separation paperwork that says you served honorably in the military. So I don't know what his experience was in the military. Travis Decker is the man we're talking about. Tonight was going to be about sex and schizophrenia, but because of this case going on right now here in Washington, is an active case where Travis Decker is accused of killing his 3 daughters, and now he's at large here in Washington. They think he's headed for the Canadian border. Doesn't surprise me if he is, because of course we're only a few hours from Vancouver here, and from the border I think it's about 2-hour drive. And I live in the Puget Sound region, just outside of Seattle, within driving range. But for me, as a military veteran, I can say, and I'm somebody who has, the thing about my case is that I had PTSD before I joined the military, but it was undiagnosed because I had anxiety. I was diagnosed at 15 or 16 with generalized anxiety, and I probably should have had a diagnosis of PTSD already before I joined the Army. But at the time I joined the Army, it was like, of course the Army wanted me that I spoke another language. I spoke French. So the Army signs you up, and then they ship you out, and then you go and you become like this killing machine. But you're supposed to still have like a semblance of what is integrity and what is right and wrong and all of that. And so for an Army veteran to turn around and take the lives of his children, it begs the question, what went wrong there? Because this man, according to all the press, so far it reports from his wife that the reason why they even left or divorced was because he didn't think he was good enough that he felt that he was less than nothing. I mean, he was in such a poor state of mind that he actually divorced his wife because he didn't think it was good enough for her, and tried to remove himself from his family and his home. But they said that there was no instant, there is no reported instance so far that we have seen of any violent acts toward his wife or his children up until this point. So we're talking about one of those situations where, like in the movies, you would see the character snaps, the character's hearing voices, and we're talking about a military veteran. I don't know if he saw combat. I don't know, but he does have a diagnosis of PTSD according to the reports. So if that's true and accurate information that's being reported, then what you can say is that person is experiencing some sort of state of some psychotic break, where he may not be fully aware of where he is in time and space. He may not even know what time of day it is. As somebody who has a history of complex PTSD, I often have psychotic flashbacks that put me right back into place. I really do feel smell of all the five senses. What I see around me is the same place I was at the time of the incident. I am seeing the person, I'm hearing the person, that person's coming at me, and I'm fighting them. And when you add alcohol into that and you add an N block trigger, N block blackout to that, you have no idea. Your brain's not recording any of this information. You're not recording any memories of the event whatsoever. So I don't know if this man struggled with substance abuse, but oftentimes with PTSD, it comes some sort of comorbid substance use disorder. Now, none of this justifies killing your children or anybody, of course. But it's important to just try to frame it under the sense that, like, there aren't just these schizo killer military veterans who are all, psychopathic killers running around. There's a stigma associated with people who serve the military, that's the picture you see is this person who's like lost their all sense of reality, and now they're out there just killing. And in this case, we have a very tragic, very sad case of a man who, by all accounts, up to this point was loving and active participant in his daughter's lives. And he was challenged by his mental health issues, and again, wasn't able to get help. Now, if you serve in the military for less than, I think, 2 years on active duty or whatever, you can't get access to benefits. So I don't know if he served just under that period of time. I don't know if he saw combat or what, but whether he did or not, it's just a matter of understanding that a person with PTSD has seen something and now they're breaking from reality. He may have believed that his daughters weren't even really human. And this happens with sometimes with postpartum depression. You see cases in the news of women who take the lives of their children because they believe that they're bad, or there's a voice telling them, it's God telling them that there's something wrong with their child, or their child is possessed by a demon. Psychosis can affect anybody at any time, at any place. You don't have to have a genetic predisposition for it. A lot of it has to do with stress. And a person's brain doesn't know what they can handle until they've been through something like this. And so for this man, I don't know what his military background was. I didn't serve with him. I don't think we served at the same time. We weren't in the same unit. I don't know the family. And again, it's too early to know anything more than what they've reported so far. And often the news reports leave out information because today is all about being the first to report and not being right or accurate. So it's the question of the hour was, this truth about why there are some people who hear voices. Well, the thing is, you're attributing all people with schizophrenia with murder. And the thing is, it's not fair. It's not statistically accurate to say that there's a correlation between schizophrenia and violent crime, when the statistics actually point to people with schizophrenia being the victims of violent crime more often than not, because they go out and see movies like Split, which cast people with schizophrenia and DID, conflates two different, completely different mental illnesses together, but nonetheless does the same thing to both of them, which depicts them as killers and psychopaths. And then these people go out, they go to school, they watch these movies, and the kids go to school, they grow up believing that there's some guy out there running around with multiple personalities, hearing voices telling them to kill. And then there's the converse of that reality, which is the real people who are suffering from schizophrenia are just as scared about what they're hearing and seeing, and they're not getting the right support. They're not getting the help they need. They don't even know necessarily that is what's going on with them, because maybe they didn't have it in their family, and they don't know what it looks like, what it could look like, or how it could manifest in them, to be able to identify and recognize, hey, this is schizophrenia, I need help, or this is PTSD, I need help. And then the question I always get is, well, how did you know, where was the difference between PTSD and the schizophrenia. And the difference is that if Travis Decker is still hearing voices now, if it's not stopped and it's gone on for years, that he's just never stopped hearing voices, or that they come and go and it doesn't affect, has nothing to do with his military experience, then you have somebody who's probably in the stages of prodromal stages of schizophrenia. And while men usually experience it at a younger era, are diagnosed with it at a younger age, women at an older age, that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen at any point in a person's life. And when you've been trained as a soldier to kill, and you've been convinced that anybody and everybody is the enemy and that we're the good guy, that can break the brain. And when you stop seeing the real world around you, when you see a different time and a different place, when you can't say who the president of the United States is, when you don't know what time of day it is, or when your answers don't make sense, and that goes on for long periods of time, that's where we have that line, that split between PTSD, which tends to be episodic. It tends to ebb and flow. A person can be in hypervigilant state for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, but a full-blown psychotic state where they're out of touch with the time of the day and who it is that they're talking to, that usually for PTSD is fairly brief. For me, my last psychotic episode that was related to military trauma lasted a few hours. I was there. I couldn't hear anything went around me. I vaguely heard some grounding stuff that got my fiance put on to help me try to ground and anchor me. But I was in a state of just almost I was in a state of quantum, I want to say quantum flux, where I didn't recognize that I was in my apartment. I didn't know where I was at. I was in a completely different country, in a different place on the other side of the world. And I was fighting, and I was I was there and not here. And when you, in the military, I don't know what I don't know what his experience was, but if you had any experience of war at all, and you know that children are part of warfare in other places in the world, like children are used as soldiers, children are enemy combatants, you could have a situation, I'm just trying to throw out a possible scenario where a man would take his children's lives in the throes of psychosis, or through the lens of somebody in the mindset of somebody with schizophrenia, to try to give you some semblance of what was this person thinking, whatever possessed them. Well, what possessed this person was most likely the fact that he was probably hearing or seeing something that was threatening, or that he believed was a danger, and he believed the only solution was to destroy it. And unfortunately, in this case, when the clouds clear and the dust settles on all of this, and he comes back, if he is not dead now out there in the woods somewhere, already hasn't taken his life, how will he be able to live with himself? How would he ever be able to forgive himself? How would he be able to face the mother of his children, knowing what he has done? I don't know, because all I know is that I barely have been able to get through the shame of my violent episodes in my past. I've never taken the life of any innocent person, but I have injured and hurt people I love in the throes of psychosis, believing they were an enemy combatant, or believing that they were somebody who had actually attacked me in the past. I have several, there were 2 different assaults that I experienced where I was attacked from behind. So I have had experiences where I believed I was back in that situation. I was being attacked, and so I thought I was fighting back. But in those situations, I was blacked out with alcohol. Once I stopped drinking alcohol and cut alcohol out of my life, I never experienced violent episodes of psychosis, because there was my faculties. I knew what was going on. I had had enough therapy. I had trauma-informed therapy. I had some good therapy in the times when I was able to work. But the problem I've had is that not having the right medication, not being able to hold a job, just not being able to be steady and financially stable for long enough, and not being able to get that consistent, steady therapy from a trained specialist, because it's just, you can't just go to anybody for PTSD. And the VA is completely backlogged. And like I said, if he didn't serve long enough on active duty, they won't give him VA healthcare benefits. So it doesn't matter if you signed your name on the dotted line to sacrifice your life for the country. It doesn't matter. They don't care. There's still all these rules and policies that state, well, if you didn't serve beyond this time, you're not eligible. You didn't serve long enough. It doesn't count. Your service just doesn't count. And so for me, like I said, I have treatment-resistant schizophrenia. I was in the military. It developed into schizophrenia because I think of the stress of what I endured when I was in the service before notwithstanding any real military related activity, but like actually the things that happened when I was still stateside, and just the process of soldierization, because I was raised in a Christian home to turn the other cheek. My parents were not happy about me joining the army, and it's a sad reality that yes, there are some people with schizophrenia who take lives, but like I said, I can't say that Travis Decker has schizophrenia because it's not been reported that that's the case. But I do see people going down that road and saying, "Oh, this guy like was trying to get help or didn't, or he snapped or whatever." And it's just so typical of people and to who are in the military to do that. And I draw a through line, a correlation, and it's a misnomer. It's a I guess, attributed connection between military veterans and psychosis and schizophrenia. Because a lot of movies depict these killers out there hunting people in the woods, and they're army veterans, or they're people who are in the military who hear voices or who are actively flashing back, and that's what's causing them to go kill people in the real world. And while maybe there's been one or two cases you could say that where that was a proven, like, factual case where there was a military veteran who was actively psychotic to the point of schizophrenia and had command voices telling him to kill people or telling him to hurt other people because they're calling him a pedophile. Like that man who thought that his whole neighborhood was calling him a pedophile, that he thought that they were broadcasting to the whole world that he was a child molester, and so he went and he shot up the bowling alley. I think you guys remember that story. I don't remember if that was a military veteran, but like, as a military veteran, there is a stigma associated. People are afraid of us. They're afraid that we're going to snap. They assume that, first of all, most people assume that if you're in the military, that you must be dangerous because you are soldierized, which is true. I guess so. It's true that, yes, from the moment you enter basic training, you are being trained and taught how to kill people and not ask questions. And the only questions that we ever ask are whether or not the orders are constitutional. So I don't want to get too into the military life and all of that, because what does that matter? We are ultimately supposed to be fighting for, the sanctity of life and democracy and freedom. But then we come home, you get whiplash. Like, there's these people who get flown to the other side of the world, being told that you're going to be on these peacekeeping missions. It's all humanitarian. We're just freedom. We're out there to help, restore freedom and democracy to, these undeveloped and developing nations, and who are being oppressed by dictators and warlords and everything. And so we're going to go rescue them. And then you get whipped right back here to first world problems, like, how many different flavors of fucking, Coke are there that you pick from? How many different flavors of toothpaste do you have to, how many different deodorants are there at the grocery store? When I was home, when I was in the army, I didn't think too much about how many choices I had. I did what I was told. I always had to do the right thing in the right place in the right uniform. And to be in that environment as a young person, it shapes you, it changes you, it molds you. You become completely paranoid and scrupulous all the time about doing the right thing and what does the right thing mean. And the military drills that into you. And then we go out there, they put you in situations that are not necessarily morally or ethically really right, but they convince you that this is the right thing, and you don't really have a choice but to say yes and click your heels and yes, this is an order. But we are told, like day one, when they tell you in the Army about leadership, that acronym, the Army values leadership, that integrity is about doing the right thing when no one's looking, even when it's the hardest thing. And for me, I knew that if I didn't get help soon for my PTSD, I knew at least it was PTSD, because I was hearing things and seeing people that other people weren't. And I was calling the police on these people. And I was, oh my God, I was freaking out all the time that there was somebody watching me and threatening me and threatening to come get me, and he was going to come slit my throat in the middle of the night and rape my dead corpse. And yeah, trigger warning for like assault and torture and death and like murder. But this is my life. My life is a waking horror show. And I've only been able to be here in front of you well enough to work and sustain an apartment and get up in every other day or more or less, and shower and brush my teeth in spite of seeing these dead bodies, seeing the dead children and the ghosts. That's the thing about my illness, is that it's a mixture of people I know whose voices, the voices, they mimic people's voices of people I know from my past, from my present. And that can be very tricky to filter and understand whether or not that's a real person talking to me or not. But if it's my grandma, I know my grandma's 1,000 miles away, and I haven't talked to her in over a decade. So no, that's not my grandma, even though she sounds like she's right here. or things like that. But when a person lacks insight, in which case I think we have, in any case you slice it, even if Travis Decker doesn't have schizophrenia, if he has PTSD and he is having a psychotic break, he's not in touch with what time of day and reality is, and he probably thinks that he's on some crazy mission to save the world, or maybe he thinks what he did was the right thing somehow. And we need to get him back alive so that he can be incarcerated in an institution where they can help. I don't know how he's gonna, I don't know, the family, I mean, just these kids, these poor children, like these children, I mean, no one deserves this. No one deserves the kind of pain and suffering of psychosis and what it can do to people and drive people to. That's why early intervention is so important. I wish the VA had more streamlined care for veterans. I wish that, I mean, in Snohomish County, where I live, there is an organization that's run by veterans that you can access if you need help, but I just don't understand what they're saying. They're saying that he couldn't get those resources. So where was the wall? Where was the snafu in the system for the veterans who come and ask for help when there is somebody saying, help, I need help? It just seems like the hoops are endless, and there's always a snafu, and there's an application with on a computer and a website with questions, and the person who's prodromally schizophrenic or has PTSD is not thinking clearly and not able to concentrate. They're in a state of hypervigilance, a fight or flight state where they feel that any minute now someone's coming to get them. And I don't know how you, without at least trying to frame it in a whole human context, it's a horrible, awful thing, and no child should be killed, just killed for any reason. And it's just sad that there was just they said there was just no history of any real violence before this happened. By all accounts, he just kind of snapped. You know, the wife said, like, she didn't want the divorce, that he divorced her because he just repeatedly kept saying how nothing he was, and that he didn't deserve love and family and children. And I could see that taking a very dark and sad, tragic turn here. But just whenever things like this happen and people talk to me, they know I was in the Army, and they know, the people who know that I have schizophrenia and PTSD, they know that about me now, because I've, of course, now fucking come out, and over 100,000 people have seen my channel now and are aware that there are people who live with treatment-resistant schizophrenia who do everything they can to get help, and still they suffer because the medications are life-threatening in and of themselves. They don't work. And I had to do the best I could to just keep using the tools I had from therapy. Like, I had cognitive behavioral therapy. I had people to help me suss out, like, look, use logic, just like Spock, because I was raised on Star Trek. So what helped me to just try to navigate the real world without medication that works has been just logic and just reason. And like, I remember I had a life before my schizophrenia diagnosis. My voices don't tell me to hurt other people. My voices are telling me that, like, it's persecutory toward me. My voices want me to hurt myself. But I know that there are cases out there where there are people who have schizophrenia who have command voices telling them to hurt other people. But there's over 1 million people with schizophrenia in the United States. 127,000 Americans right now who are military veterans also have a diagnosis of schizophrenia. So this is a problem, and it is a human one, and it is something that we need to address head on. We need to be unafraid to talk about these things raw, candidly, and I am deeply ashamed of the fact that I ever hurt anybody physically. If you'd known me as a child, I was just such a loving person, a pleaser. I wanted to just be the best little Christian, child of God I could be. I just wanted to be the best person I could be, live up to my potential, live up to God's will for my life, God's vision for my life, and just do that. And that's all I'd ever wanted. And even in the throes of schizophrenia, like, I don't have the voice of God telling me to go, drown my cat. Thank God, because if I did, but even then, I have like enough insight to know, wait, that's a weird thing to be happening. Why would it? First of all, like, I have a family history of schizophrenia, but what if I'm a person who doesn't? And I'm hearing these voices and I'm seeing these things, and other people aren't around, and I'm starting to feel isolated and alone. Like, I'm the only person who hears this, sees this, feels this. hallucinations can come in a lot of different forms. They can come in tactile, which means touch and feel. Sometimes it can feel as if a person's stabbing you. It feels like you're being burned. Sometimes it feels like someone's come out of nowhere and just punched me upside my head. And I'll even react to it like it's really happening to me because I feel it like a real punch to the face. And when you get to a point where you're not able to tell, or when you believe that the world is a simulation, that everybody's a robot, then it's easier to dehumanize that person in your mind and believe that it's your mission to eradicate the world of the robot takeover, you know? I mean, that's what we're talking about when you, think about it. When was the last time you interacted with somebody that you saw talking, crazy, to the air, or talking to somebody, or talking about chips, or the government, or the FBI following them? I mean, this is a common theme within schizophrenia, but now we're living in a world where it's actually true that nothing is really real anymore, because you have AI generated video influencer models, completely fabricated personas running entire YouTube channels. So then this is for people with schizophrenia who are already mistrusting of screens and because of the things you see. This is creating more stress. So we isolate and we withdraw further and further from society because we don't know who we can trust. I don't even know who is real here. I don't know if you're a bot. I don't know if you're a real true friend of mine. I don't know if you're friend or foe. So imagine military. I want you to think about my lie. Like, let's go back to my lie. If it's true that Travis has been anywhere near a combat zone, then I want you to think back to My Lai massacre during Vietnam, when you had Native people in the jungles and they were blending into the villages as Native villagers and hiding out, and they were ambushing American troops. If you're 18 and 19 years old and you've never picked up a weapon, and all of a sudden they drop you into this jungle in the middle of this hot, steamy jungle that's full of death traps, literal death traps everywhere you step, and the enemy is somebody you can't see, can't recognize, and it blends in with everybody else around you, it created what they call a fog of war. So when we talk about shell shock during World War II and World War I, we're talking about, when we say PTSD, it's such a coined phrase that's like, people just drop it now. They say the word triggered. But for military veterans who've seen combat, we're talking about literally being transported into a different time and space and place. So you are trained a soldier and you're going to fight and you're going to do what you're going to do. You're going to advance forward. And so during my life, that's what happened. These soldiers opened up on the villagers and they slaughtered and bayoneted babies, and they killed women and raped women, and they slaughtered these babies. They bayoneted babies. Who does that? Why would you ever think that even that would ever be okay? Even in combat scenario, what those babies are enemy combatants. Why would you do that? These men had completely lost all sense of what was real around them. They were completely, when you talk about mad, they were psychotic beyond all recognition of humanity. The inability to recognize an infant as not being a threat is proof. And then those men came back, and when they came back from Vietnam, they were treated as monsters because of what they had done. And in my life, there was one soldier who stood up, a warrant officer who stood up and said, "No, enough, stop." Stood up before the tanks, and that's personal courage. That's integrity. But we even see now in our military today that that's not happening. We don't see that same kind of courage. People in the military now have sort of been like complacent because they haven't seen a lot of the same kind of action at the grand global scale of like a global conflict like World War II or even Vietnam. Iraq and Afghanistan, not everybody went. I joined the military when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was supposed to go to Afghanistan. But the nature of my job as a linguist and as a French linguist took me on a different path. So I think I was really expected to go once I came back from Germany, but it just didn't happen. I injured my shoulder. Things didn't go that way. But I'm glad that I didn't stay in the military, because I think I probably was in prodromal schizophrenia when I was in the service. I actually was in the service with somebody who had schizophrenia. And there was a woman in my unit who had schizophrenia. She published a whole manifesto about an FBI agent, a rogue FBI agent who had planted a chip in her and who was going into her house back in Illinois where she was from and taking her keys and like activating some weird little experiment machine inside her body to like give her orgasms and stuff, like when she was sleeping in the middle of nowhere from thousands of miles away. And oh my God, she let me read it. And as I was reading, I was like, this is crazy. This woman works in the military intelligence unit of the United States Army, and the entire command knows that this person probably has schizophrenia based on just all of these claims she went to the San Francisco field office and like knocked down the door practically to tell them about this rogue FBI agent. And they went on a wild goose chase looking for this person who doesn't exist. And I can't, the irony in this is that we all looked at this person like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, get this woman out of the army, get this woman out of the army now, now, now. But now I realize, like, God, fuck, what happened to me within a year after leaving the military? I'm in a hospital in Riverside, California, in a County Farm Road, being diagnosed with schizophrenia because I'm seeing a man and he's threatening me, and I'm calling him, the cops on him, and everybody's saying there's nobody there. The irony, but it's just for that to be a thing that the military would even allow to, like, a person to go forward in their contract any further than that. I don't know what the military is thinking. It's just like, how badly do you need a body that you're willing to put a lot of bodies at risk, on the off chance that maybe something happens before or after. I don't know what they were thinking when they went when they were going through all that with that soldier. But I just know that even the process of soldierizing somebody, breaking somebody down, treating you as if you're absolutely zero, nothing, and then replacing that nothingness with an indoctrination, a set of values that says that you're always wrong unless somebody else tells you you're right, to never anticipate, to only wait for the word, to never anticipate, to only follow the orders that are given to you and never question them. But then on the other side, on the back end of it, be told to never follow an unconstitutional or illegal order. These create moral and ethical quandaries that our soldiers right now who are down at the southern border, for example, are having to face. We're talking about Big Red 1, the Army's famous, one of the most honored and esteemed units in the United States Army, Big Red 1, the 101st Airborne Division, who saved our country during World War II. I mean, credited with really, pretty much saving our asses during World War II. And these people are now, we have young people who are in the military wearing the uniform, swore this oath, and now they're down there trucking these people back and forth and, flying the C-130s with all these people and not knowing necessarily whether or not these orders are really constitutional or legal orders. And so they're just kind of going along with it because they don't know what to do and what else to do. Because in basic training, you were taught to never anticipate, wait for the word, never anticipate, don't think for yourself, wait for somebody else will tell you what to do, what to wear, how to wear exactly to the nines. And so the longer you spend in an environment like that where you're constantly micromanaged, that can do something to you. And then, of course, the killing and the training to kill and the dissonance that can come along with knowing that at any minute you could be called upon, even though you're not really supposed to be in those situations, you can still be called upon to take a human life, to contend with that. Our Air Force, a lot of our Air Force personnel, especially our drone warfare specialists, in the military, it's like you're not really a true soldier unless you've seen action, or unless you've killed somebody, or unless you've been shot at, or seen something, or been downrange, or been to the sandbox, or whatever. And you don't really get credit as a true veteran unless you've really seen something, because we all hold ourselves to this crazy, impossibly standard of perfection, which we all herald the greatest generation, World War II, the Buffalo Soldiers, Tuskegee Airmen, World War II, Big Red 1. These are heralded, storied units of the military in our country, and we just glorify and we almost practically canonize them as saints. And we want to be like them, and we'll never count as true soldiers or veterans or patriots unless we give the ultimate sacrifice the way that they did. That's extraordinary pressure to be under, to be perfect all the time. And for people who make a career out of that and do go downrange and then come back home and then go downrange and then come back home, and they just have to keep switching it. It's called compartmentalization. You don't have time to sit and cry about it. You go. You can unpack it later with a therapist, but therapy, fuck that. Who's going to therapy? If you're in the Army, you knew what you were signing up for. What the fuck is wrong with you, weak sauce motherfucker? You have to sit down and cry all your problems. There's people who've got it way worse than you, and you think what you did is a big deal worth going to therapy for? That's the kind of attitude that you get from people who served. And even now, the people in the chat, I'm sure there's going to be somebody down there who's like, well, boo-hoo. I'm not excusing any violent behavior whatsoever. I'm just trying to give you a fuller sense of the lifestyle and the mindset of a soldier, even if they're not in the military anymore. Do you know that the last day I served, before I left and drove away forever from the Army, my first sergeant told me that no matter where I go, no matter what happens to me in my life, everywhere I go, I will always represent the United States Army, and I will represent that uniform forever. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Once a Marine, always a Marine, right? But we forget that there's people in the military who really just shouldn't be there, and in the first place. And the military does its best to, like, drum people in and out as it can. But there are people who just get through. And I was one of those people who was just bound and determined to make a career out of the military. It was the only way I knew I could get money for college. But you don't think that you're ever going to actually shoot a gun at somebody or stab somebody with your bayonet, do you? You never think that's going to happen. The recruiters are convincing you, well, as a woman, you're never going to see combat because you're in combat support. You can't be in the infantry, so you're never going to see anything. But that's not always true. Women who are 88 mics get blown up just the same as men who are 88 mics too. And when you're the only linguist in your unit, there's always a possibility of having to go down range with the convoy because you may be the only person on hand who speaks the language you can translate. And even though you're a SIGINT, even though you're not really supposed to be out there on tactical missions, you're put it in a little room to listen to real conversations with real people who then eventually somebody's going to go and shoot and kill. So you live with that. You have to come back to reality in the real world. And then you have to ask yourself, what is even the real world? What's real? Because my reality and their reality over there versus what's here in the United States and what's real here, it's not the same. So when I say perception is not reality, perception really is not reality. We all are living in our own perceptions. And as a military veteran, it's like I'm so sad and sickened and appalled to see yet another case of a veteran who is trying to get help and is doing everything possible, it seems, by all accounts so far, try to do the right thing by his family, to keep himself, his family, his children safe, a loving father, a committed father, an active participant in his children's lives. And to see it take such a turn is just, it's devastating. And all it does is further serves to continue to vilify and increase stigma about military people, about PTSD, and about schizophrenia, because again, there is a huge conflation between PTSD and schizophrenia, and people just assume that one sort of leads to the other. And it doesn't always, but it can. And like I said at the beginning of my live stream, there are 125 to 127,000 people approximately that we know of that are sort of like accounted for by some study or a statistic by the National Institute of Mental Health who live and suffer with schizophrenia, and I'm one of them. And I have treatment-resistant schizophrenia. When you've been soldierized, it tends to make people who've been soldierized tend to have a harder time recovering from schizophrenia because they're plagued by the stress of the trauma that they've endured. 9 out of 10 people with schizophrenia have a history of childhood trauma. People who have these types of psychotic illnesses, they're really going through something that just happened to them. And it's time that we need to start thinking about this is something that was a tragic thing that happened to somebody that could have been prevented had there been the right intervention and supports in place. And the military is responsible for that. The VA is responsible for that. That's what Veterans Administration is for. And it's wrong that the man didn't get the care that he needed, that there wasn't that intervention in time to save his children's lives. Because as far as anybody knows, there's no way that anybody would have said that he would have been capable of such a thing, So it's food for thought. I decided to do that. Next week we'll talk about perception and reality. We'll talk about AI. We'll talk about all the fake, models out there and how I feel like people are now finally starting to see, like, how from my schizophrenic perspective, how nothing is real and why it's so hard to plug into the world because everything is fake, everything is phony, everything is AI generated, and nothing is real. It's all being done at scale to make money, but it's not really helping anybody who really needs help. So my goal out here is just call that out, talk about AI and schizophrenia. I'll be talking about sex and schizophrenia, like sex life and stuff about, that kind of thing. But in the meantime, like, this story has really got me really fucked up because it's just sad. He could still be out there. They should lock your doors and everything. And it's really sad. So, leave a comment, leave your thoughts. Feel free to chime in here. I'm just trying to get my shit back together to move on with my night because it's hard when you know that there's somebody out there suffering and the world just says no, it's okay to let these things happen. so that somebody can make a movie about it and make billions of dollars out of it at the box office. Somebody who has no horse in that game, no skin in that game whatsoever, no relation or connection to this illness or the havoc that it wreaks on people's lives. And yet they're out there cashing in these royalty checks, year after year. And like, shame on them. Shame on M. Night Shyamalan for Split. Shame on all of them. It's time that people really understand that schizophrenia is something that happens to people like MS. You don't have to have a genetic predisposition to develop schizophrenia. You don't have to have a family history of it. You don't have to have ever had a single drug or substance in your life. It's just something happens. It's something weird in the human. Some brains are just not equipped to deal with the amount of stress that exists in our world. And it's just a sad fact of the matter, but it doesn't mean that all people with schizophrenia are prone to violence. And the statistics, if you read from the National Institute of Mental Health, will tell you that people with schizophrenia are actually 10 to 12. This is being conservative. This is a conservative statistic. 10 to 12 times more likely to be victims of violent crime than to be perpetrators of it. So even though Travis Decker may not have schizophrenia, he has psychosis, and that psychosis has led him to do allegedly something awful, something terrible, something completely unspeakable, and that is to take the lives of his children. And we are still going to spend the rest of our life trying to ask ourselves why and how this happened and came to pass. But for now, my real true thoughts are with the family, with the mom, with the family of these children. But please do not come away from this live stream believing that people with schizophrenia or PTSD or military veterans or any of those three types of people are inherently dangerous. Most of us who have insight are doing our best to try to stay healthy and try to stay safe, and we're not all experiencing that same type of psychosis. So everybody's experience is different. It's a spectrum. And I just plead for just to seek understanding and not to completely demonize this man, no matter what the circumstance may be. There's a battle going on there that none of us will ever understand. And while that may not excuse what he's done, if it's true that he's done this to his children, that will still just a plead for other people in the world who are suffering and are becoming victimized because of these stigmas and harmful stereotypes that continue to be perpetuated. And then, unfortunately, there are real-world cases where, unfortunately, like Ed Gein is an example of one serial killer, one that I could name. But of all the other serial killers in the world that I could name, none of them except Ed Gein was ever shown or proven or known to have heard voices. And so, like Ted Bundy, Aileen Wuornos, none of those people were schizophrenic. None of them were even actively psychotic during their crimes. And so it's just we need to dispel these myths, break the stigma down, erase the stigma, see people as multifaceted and whole beings, get those veterans the help that we need. It doesn't matter how long they were in the service. It doesn't matter whether they saw combat or not. Just being soldierized is enough to fuck a person up and really change the way a person views the world, and I mean in a dangerous way. And then when you have the capability of killing, which of course I went to basic training, I have the capability. I had to remove myself from situations because I knew that I wasn't safe, because I'd had these blackout episodes before where I was out of touch with reality and I did attack people I loved, and I can't ever take the risk of that ever happening again. So I went into hospital and I got myself committed, and they said, look, we're going to do everything we can to help you. And for the last 15 years, and I've never stopped trying to be stable and safe and be the person I was before schizophrenia. And that was just a loving person who wants to do good things in the world, make art that matters, elevate the voices of the marginalized, help kids feel that they have a sense of fun and belonging in the world. And just that's it. Just be myself, be the person I was, the well me, not the schizophrenic me, not the PTSD riddled me, and definitely not the soldierized me who is a hard ass and who is intolerant and impatient with other people's frailty and fragility. I mean, there's just an exacting nature of military life that there's no wiggle room. You are always wrong unless somebody tells you you're high speed. That's just how it is. And it's hard for young people to live that way. And the longer you stay in, the harder it is to transition out of that mindset. And my great-grandfather, who fought the Battle of the Bulge at World War II, I mean, he went in at the end of the war. And he fought in the Battle of the Bulge, which they said was some of the fiercest fighting of the entire conflict, was at the end at Ardennes. And my grandmother says that he came back her entire childhood was regimented from the 6 a.m. in the morning, 6:05, 6:10, 6:12. Every minute of her life was accounted for and regimented and scheduled because her father had been traumatized by the war, and this was the only way that he knew how to seek some semblance or anchor of normalcy and reality, that he was safe, that this kept him safe, knowing where he had a place to be, that there something was going to happen at a certain time, that would happen every single day, that could be predicted. It's safe. It's a feeling of safety, because if you've been in combat, you know what it means to feel that there's nowhere to hide, there's no cover, there's no true safety. At any moment, you could be blown up. You could be literally blown apart, or your buddies could be blown apart. And there's no telling when that could happen. And then they drop you back off at home like that never happened. And you're not supposed to talk about it because lives are on the line even now. OPSEC, OPSEC, OPSEC. So it's food for thought. Thank you for being here. If you were here even for a moment, if you want to know more, if you want a sense of what my life with treatment-resistant schizophrenia is from day to day, like I have a bunch of videos on here that like are POV style simulation videos. Shows my wake up in the morning, how I wake up versus how non-schizophrenic people wake up. Because from the moment I wake up, I hear voices, and my voices aren't in my head; they're outside. They sound like they're coming from outside of me, so they feel very real and they're sinister and it's disturbing. And of course, my voices, I'm lucky, I guess, in the sense that my voices are just hammering at me and want me to hurt myself. They're not telling me to hurt other people. But I believe that a person who is of good heart and good intention through and through is just as scared of those voices that may be telling them to hurt other people as people are of people with schizophrenia, who are seen in the media to be violent criminals and like psychopathic killers. We have to get away from the conflation of psychopathy with psychosis. There's a difference between psychopathy and psychosis, and the difference is empathy. The difference is, I have a true belief that Travis Decker he's probably already killed himself, because a person with empathy, once you come down from a situation like that, I've been in a situation where I came back around only to find out that I had hurt somebody I loved, and I was beside myself with remorse. All I wanted to do was kill myself, and I did try to kill myself because I believed that I was no longer safe to be in society, and it was the only way I could ever possibly make other people feel safe again, was to take myself out of the equation. So if Travis Decker is out there and he has empathy and knows now what he did, I don't know how he's going to live with it. And I hope for his family's sake that they find him alive and they can get to the bottom of what was going on, because the worst thing to do is to never have the answers to why and how, what was going through his mind. How did it get to this place where he wasn't able to see his children as innocent lives and innocent, just perfect beings that don't deserve that type of, to experience that type of mortal peril and fear? How could he look at his children and do that to them? I mean, nobody in their right mind could do that. That person is either a psychopath or they're psychotic, and they're very rarely in between do the two overlap. And that's the thing. It's just like there's still empathy and that remorse factor. And that's the difference. And people with schizophrenia are absolutely processing oxytocin and experiencing empathy. And that's my TED Talk. Thank you for coming tonight. See you guys next Sunday, 7 p.m., same bat time, same bat place. Sorry I haven't been responding to a lot of the comments. As you can imagine, with my visual hallucinations, the screen is always jumping, and there's jarring shit that comes across the screen and stuff. So I generally avoid looking at the screen as a general rule. I have a hard time looking at the screen. But thank you just for listening, for even being willing to hear out somebody who is schizophrenic and an Army veteran and has PTSD and has been violent. And no, I've never taken the life of someone who was an innocent, and I've never, I don't even have children. But that is a question that people ask me. It's like, do you think that people with schizophrenia should even have kids? Do you think that veterans with PTSD should even be out there having babies? And it's like, well, I don't think anybody who isn't prepared to take on the responsibility of caring for another human being should be having children generally. And so if a person has a mental illness and they know that something's up and they're experiencing even anxiety, that can really disrupt their ability to be a healthy parent for the child. And so while I don't believe that every schizophrenic person should never have children, I do believe that there are some instances where, it wouldn't be wise to go and have a baby on top of the stress that you already feel, not being able to tell what's real and not. So no, it's not wise. And no, you should be absolutely, I think it should be discouraged at least until the person is really in recovery. And yes, most people with schizophrenia can recover with medication, but there's just a few rare unlucky ducks like me who don't respond, or there's a medication that maybe works, but the side effects, like for me, Geodon was the most efficacious medication for my voices and for my psychosis. But I had ocular gyrate crisis, which basically looked like a seizure, and it forced my eyes to lock upward. And it would happen while I was driving. It happened while I was at work. It happened several times a week. It ruined my New Year's Eve. It ruined my Christmas. It ruined my last relationship altogether because I was constantly having these panic attack episodes with my eyes locked on the ceiling, and my fiance at the time didn't know what to do. And I think at the end of the day, they were just like, I can't handle this. And it was just like too much. And then that was the end of that relationship. So next week, I'll be talking about sex and relationships and what I've been through in terms of relationships and trying to like manage my illness and still feel worthy of being loved in spite of the constant voices telling me that I'm not worthy. And that I am engaged and I am with somebody who loves me and accepts me. And I think it's worth sharing that story. So next week, we'll get into sex and relationships while schizophrenic. And I hope you'll tune in for that. And in the meantime, I'll keep following and tracking the story about Travis Decker and these precious little girls. As an educator my whole life long, it's devastating. All I want to do is protect children. I mean, I wasn't protected as a child from things that I should have been protected from. And so as an educator myself over the years, I've just made it my mission to make sure that children feel safe. And it's really hard because people think that because of what I am, I'm not safe to be around children. But the truth is that people like me, you know, they want so much to just be safe and be healthy and be happy. And that's all we want. And we don't want to hurt people. And we sure shit don't want to hurt children. And so I just don't want people coming away from the story thinking, oh my God, that army guy next, you know, that army veteran, like that you can't, like, they're a ticking time bomb. It's like, that could be true, but like, why would you want to live your life in that kind of fear, knowing that the statistics don't back that up? It's just that these most sensationalized, crazy stories get reported because they draw clicks, it's attention, it's likes, it's views. So I'm begging you to just think before you trust everything you see. There's a lot of AI generated crap out there now, and I'm not gonna like sugarcoat shit. Like now you get a sense of what I'm dealing with. So I'll leave it at that. But thanks everybody. You guys, everybody, please take care. Be good to each other. Stay safe. Stay informed. Please listen to other people with schizophrenia. Don't just take my word for it. Listen to other military veterans with PTSD. Listen to other people. Listen to people with the actual experience. Don't rely on Hollywood. Don't rely on the media. Don't rely on YouTube. I mean, you're listening to me right now, but I think I'm one of the only people out here doing kind of like what I am doing right now, which is being really hard and hard, uncomfortable truth about schizophrenia and complex PTSD as a military veteran. And knowing that there's a stigma and people are afraid of me without even knowing me. I needed a chance to at least be heard. And there's no money coming through. There's no monetization. They want 1,000 subscribers so I can put ads on my shorts. I'm not doing that. I'm a creative artist. I'm a writer. I write novels and stories about people with schizophrenia that are sci-fi and horror books. And if you want to know what that experience would be like to be schizophrenic and caught up in some crazy shit in the world, in a horror setting, in a horror genre of novel, then you want to check out my books. And I think I'm the only person. I don't know any other schizophrenic sci-fi authors. Or at least not openly schizophrenic who are actively publishing. And so I'm here to just challenge these misconceptions about people with schizophrenia, especially treatment-resistant schizophrenia, because I was that person in the street. But I've had now 15 years, and I've had some good therapy. So I'm in a better place than I was. I've gamified my life. I have had some CBT that's given me some tools to either ignore my hallucinations or, you know, just live past them and through them in spite of them. And I am grateful to have the love and support of my fiance and my best friend of almost 20 years now. I don't need 30,000 followers or millions of followers. I just need one person to say, hey, look, we see that people with schizophrenia are human and we deserve to be heard. We are not monsters. We're not horror tropes. I am the protagonist in a living, waking nightmare of a horror movie that never ends for me. the voices are always with me, omnipresent at almost all times of the day and night. And I'm just having to beg and plead people to try to see things from my perspective. Just try for a moment to imagine what your life would be like if you had 12 or 13 or more people following you around, constantly threatening to rape you with knives and telling you what a piece of shit you are and how you smell and how you're ugly and how the world hates you and how you should just kill yourself. And this is a constant thing. And it's not your subvocal speech. It's not me. It's not my thoughts that my brain can't interpret or is misattributing. Okay, it's a sensory misfire of the brain. My brain is receiving information and misinterpreting it, and different areas of the brain are misfiring. And that's what's happening. It's like a glitch, which is why I was constantly throwing my head into the wall because I thought for some reason I wasn't real. That's where the Cotard syndrome started to really set in. And I believed I was dead or I wasn't even real. For some reason, I actually, for a while, I thought I was an android or I thought I was some sort of synthetic clone of my past self, that I had died and been replaced by a clone of myself. Like, these are the actual delusions. I believe this was reality for me. And it still feels that way because I feel that control is the number one, the closest voice to my ear. And right here sits behind my right ear and it's constantly there. And it feels like there's been times I understand where Vincent van Gogh, like why he cut off his ear. Because I've wanted to do that. I wanted to get a knife and just dig right in there. And I know that would be probably to you, that's like horrifying to see it or imagine. But for me, it's relief. It's like an itch. It's like the telltale heart, it's like the thing that never stops, and it's maddening. It's when they say Chinese water torture or whatever, when it really is a constant state of helplessness, and I can't strike out at them and I can't lash out at them because now that I know they're real, it's like, oh my God, now if you do lash out, if you do yell back or talk back to your voices or your hallucinations, now the world will see you as the real crazy schizo that you are, and nobody will want you to work for them. And I've already been through it. I've lost everything. Over and time and time and time again. There's nothing that anybody can say to me or do to me at this point that hasn't already been done, and I'm no longer afraid of death. So if there's anybody out there who thinks it's a good idea to come test me or some way or to use this against me in some way, I mean, bring it on, because I think there's just nothing else I've been through it already, and I'm still here. Still working, still contributing, still loving, being loved, still having friendships, still thriving to a certain extent in spite of treatment-resistant schizophrenia. And that is a blessing. And I celebrate that win every day. When I get down to the bottom of the stairs, even when Ed's behind me, knowing the whole way that he's threatening to rape me and, screw my decapitated, severed head, I mean, even though he's there saying those things to me, I'm still driving. I'm still getting to work. I'm still with my coworkers. I'm still listening to them. And I'm still, I'm still present in the world. I'm walking and living in two worlds. But I am here. And that's thanks to Stephanie Gonzalez, who was there for me, my therapist during the pandemic, who really helped me get a sense of what my triggers and what my hallucinations looked like and sounded like so that I could check my reality. And I learned how to reality check. And then I came up with this app called Perceptor for myself to navigate the real world. And I'm hoping that will help other people with schizophrenia. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you. Have a guys nice.